The NASDAQ is doing a Bitcoin experiment. So it's launching a pilot project in the NASDAQ private market, so that handles pre-IPO trading. Kif Leswing is with me now of the International Business Times. So Kif, the NASDAQ essentially is working on creating this kind of decentralized system. So if it works, which middlemen are going to lose?
Well, a lot of them. There's a sense that Bitcoin or the Bitcoin technology can really be leveraged to make a lot of old, antiquated operations a lot more efficient, and that would include banks and clearinghouses and that kind of thing. So
banks, clearinghouses, basically other middlemen are going to lose business, and it seems like lawyers may lose a little bit of money as well.
Yeah, well, the experiment, is really small scale right now, but what it does is it keeps track of pre-IPO companies, and right now, those are hand recorded in ledgers by, lawyers. And if this Bitcoin experiment works, then anyone could go online and check on the blockchain, whether this share has been transferred. And, someone gets paid to make that transfer.
Right. Someone gets paid, and often it's a middleman or a lawyer. Okay, so we pointed out who loses, but who wins? I mean, I know there's about 75 companies that are registered. The NASDAQ sort of started this pre-IPO market about a year and a half ago. 75 companies are registered with the platform. So did the companies gain?
I don't think the companies gain. I think the biggest gainer would be NASDAQ, because when you use Bitcoin in the way they're doing it, there's no transaction cost. So really it cuts down there.
Okay, it cuts down there. What are the biggest systemic concerns, though? Because it's one thing to be cheaper and take all these people from out in the middle. The flip side is, what's the integrity of the verification system, for example?
Well, that's a big problem. And it would happen if, over 51% of the computers managing the blockchain were all owned by the same person. It could really throw a wrench into it.
Or you could even have some bad actors, in theory, getting in the mix.
Well, the great thing about Bitcoin and the blockchain is that a lot of bad actors should be taken out naturally by the system. It's really if someone controls 51% that there would be a really big issue.
So are there other test cases out there? The NASDAQ is doing its thing. Are there other institutions? I know the New York Stock Exchange, I remember at some point partnered with Coinbase. Goldman was looking at somebody. There's a few different bubbles happening,
there's
right?
a lot that can be done with Bitcoin technology. What NASDAQ is doing is they're doing something called colored coins, where it's not about the value of the coin, it's about this data they've embedded in it. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with that, too. People being able to transfer the deed of their house, for instance, using a colored coin.
All right. Well, the future may be virtual. Kif, it's great to see you. Kif Leswing joining me there, the International Business Times, on the NASDAQ's experiment.
But of course, you mentioned if there's an economic collapse, let's take this now to the ban on cash. Of course, there's an article up today. Leading German Keynesian economist calls for cash ban. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, this is German Council of Economic expert Peter Bofinger. This came out of Spiegel. He said, quote, "Coins and bills are obsolete and only reduce the influence of central banks." So currently we've got this obsession that technocratic interventionism, despite the fact that it's proven utterly flawed in reviving economic growth, is now the answer, even though it's proven to have never worked in the first place. So a few days ago, we put out the article about Jim Leavis. He wrote an editorial out of the Telegraph, which got linked on Drudge, which said, quote, "Forcing everyone to spend only by electronic means from an account held at a government-run bank would give the authorities far better tools to deal with recessions and economic booms." So it's basically Keynesianism on steroids. It sounds like something out of Adolf Hitler's Minister of Finance. What's interesting about Leavis is when I drew attention to his Twitter account after he put out this article, he not only locked his Twitter account, he actually removed his own picture, his own face, blacked out his own face from his personal Twitter account after he began to catch heat for this article. So It seems as soon as they start to attract criticism, they run away like cowards because nobody agrees with them whatsoever. And, we've had Citi's William Buter come out and say the same thing a few weeks before. We've talked about banks in the UK like HSBC interrogating people on the money they deposit and the money they take out when it's in amounts over £5,000. So there's a war on cash, and basically central bankers are trying to position themselves for the next economic collapse, the bond apocalypse, which everybody says is coming, to exploit this situation. And they don't want people having a significant amount of control over their own capital. So that's why they're pushing these kind of draconian measures.
Absolutely. It's all about control. It's about central bank control. Now, they like to spin it as saying that it is something that is benign and beneficial. But of course, it isn't going to be benign and beneficial if they take away your freedom and your independence. And related to that, I mean, is what they're doing with the automotive cars, the self-driving autonomous cars, saying that they're going to take away. And of course, we've had Elon Musk say it won't be that long before humans will be banned from driving cars. We've got the head of Uber saying that once they get self-driving taxis, then individual car ownership will just go away. All of these are control points, your movement, your physical movement, and of course, your movement of cash, your control of cash. And they want to know, Paul, everything about you, which is what we've just been talking about, mastering the human domain, looking at all of our metadata, looking at our social network, looking at what we do, where we go, the cash that we have. It's all part of that dominating the human domain. And that's a very troubling idea, but that certainly, I think, describes very well the broad policies of our government, not just abroad, but certainly directed here in the United States.
Exactly. And they want you to know that they're collecting all your data, not really because most of the data is very useful, simply for the fact that if you know you're being watched, you self-police, you change your behavior, you dissuade yourself from engaging in free speech, from criticizing authority. So just the very notion that you're under surveillance, never mind what information they've got on you, is a control mechanism. And then going back to this quote, this column by Levis in the Telegraph, he said, quote, "If notes and coins were abolished and the only way to hold money was through a government-controlled bank, there would be no escape." So he's that brazen in talking about how people will, their finances will be locked down in prison within this central banker-controlled system. You know, it's akin to having a bank account where you have to get government permission to take out your money.
It sounds like science fiction, placing a microchip under the skin to get you in your door, to start your car, or maybe give your doctor your medical history.
Or what if your child were to disappear? Would you be willing to place a chip in your child if it might help them bring them home? Barry Davis recently looked into what all this technology is about and the possibilities of this science.
According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, more than 2,000 children are reported missing each day. Most are found, some never are. But what if there was the technology which could help bring those children home? And that technology was no bigger than a grain of rice.
Elliot! Oh gosh. He's on the swings. Oh, hi. Yeah, that scared me.
It's something most every parent has felt. That sick panic. You're watching your child play, having fun. You turn your head for just a moment, and they're gone.
My stomach drops, I feel nauseous and dizzy, and I imagine all of the horrible things that could happen.
Trish Dickerson is the mother of a rambunctious 3.5-year-old who has no fear of anything or anybody.
And it scares me. It scares me so much. Someone would just be like, "Hey, I have candy," and he'd be like, "Heck yes, candy."
We've been microchipping our pets for years, so why not use that technology to protect something far more precious?
It's technically realistic.
Stuart Lipoff is an electronics engineer who's watching the microchip industry closely. He says by placing signposts or portals like this handheld unit for animals in key locations, you could track someone. Some people are already placing microchips in their hands, which help them control everything from their computers to opening their front doors. And most of us use microchips every day to open doors to work or buy lunch with a debit or credit card.
The ick factor, it still is kind of icky of, having somebody, put something into your body that's a foreign thing.
Lipoff says it's only a matter of time before people realize how beneficial it could be, and not just for convenience, but in what literally could be a life-saving instance.
I might be one of those moms in a heartbeat. I think I'd have him chipped, just so I would feel safer.
There are devices you can buy to put on your kids which allows you to track them with GPS. Right now, the technology to track a microchip with GPS isn't available, at least not available to the public. Barry Davis, KENS 5, Eyewitness News.